Every night ends the same way, though I didn't realize that at first. I thought repetition was something that revealed itself only in hindsight, that patterns required distance. But winter teaches you differently. Winter presses its face to the glass and waits until you understand that some things are not going anywhere, that some things will repeat not because they must, but because they want to. The house sits at the edge of undeveloped woods, far enough from town that the road noise dies before it reaches the porch, close enough to the trees that branches brush the siding when the wind turns. When I bought it, the realtor used words like quiet and private and unspoiled. She did not use the word patient, but if she had, I might have laughed. Patience feels like a human quality when you're standing in a heated office with coffee cooling between your palms. It feels different when the cold has settled in your bones and refuses to leave. The first winter was mild. Snow came and went, the furnace hummed reliably, and the house behaved like a house should. It creaked when the temperature dropped, sighed when the sun warmed the roof, complained in small, familiar ways. I learned it sounds the way you learn another person's breathing, half-conscious, reassuring. At night, I slept easily, the woods outside no more threatening than a dark painting. The second winter did not end. By December the snow was constant, a white pressure that flattened the world and muted it until silence felt physical. The road disappeared under drifts. The porch steps vanished. The sky remained a dull, unchanging gray, as if the sun had decided to stop trying. I told myself it would break, that weather always did, but January arrived like an extension of December, and February followed with no apology. The house grew colder despite the furnace running day and night. I sealed windows, laid rugs, stuffed towels into gaps beneath doors. Still, the air inside felt unfinished, like something had scooped warmth out and forgotten to put it back. When I exhaled, my breath fogged faintly, even in the living room. At first, I found it strange. Then I found it familiar. Then I found myself watching it, measuring how long the cloud lingered before dissolving, as if that meant something. The first time I noticed the lock, I was standing at the front door just before bed, hand on the knob out of habit. The latch clicked softly under my fingers, a shallow, unsatisfying sound. I pulled the door toward me, testing it. It moved an inch, then stopped. I frowned, tightened the screws on the strike plate, tried again. The latch caught more firmly. Problem solved, I told myself. In the morning, the door stood slightly open. Just enough for a line of snow to have blown across the threshold, a thin white finger pointing inward. The cold rushed at me as I approached, sharper than the rest of the house. I stared at the gap, heart doing something quick and stupid in my chest, then laughed quietly at myself. Wind, I said aloud. Old house. I brushed the snow away and closed the door. The latch clicked. I checked it twice. That night, lying in bed, I heard the house settle. The familiar tick of cooling wood stretched and echoed, slower than usual, as if the sound had more space to fill. Somewhere below me, a board creaked, then another. I lay still, counting my breaths, watching the ceiling fade in and out of shadow as clouds passed over the moon. A sound reached me through the floor, soft enough that I wondered if I'd imagined it. Not a creak. Not a pop. Something closer to a shuffle, the suggestion of weight shifting from one place to another. I waited for it to repeat. It didn't. In the morning, the front door was open again. I began to fix things. That became my routine, my answer to the growing unease I refused to name. Each day I found something slightly wrong, and each day I corrected it. I replaced screws with longer ones. I adjusted hinges. I sanded a swelling doorframe, then repainted it. I told myself I was maintaining the house, that this was what ownership looked like. But the house did not respond the way it should have. Each night undid my work with a careful, almost delicate hand. The back door joined the rebellion next. It wouldn't stay shut, swinging inward a few inches no matter how firmly I closed it. I wedged a chair under the handle. In the morning, the chair lay on its side, the door open wide enough to admit a drift of snow that glittered faintly in the gray light. I stood there for a long time, coat still on, keys cold in my hand. The woods beyond the porch were heavy with snow, branches bowed low, dark trunks disappearing into white. Nothing moved. No tracks marred the fresh surface near the door. It was as if the snow had placed itself there politely, without disturbance. That was when I first felt watched, though the feeling was vague and easily dismissed. It was more an awareness than a fear, like noticing pressure in your ears before a storm. I shook it off, shut the door, dragged the chair back into place. Sleep began to fracture after that. I would drift off for an hour, maybe two, then wake with the sense that something had changed. The darkness felt thicker, more deliberate. The house seemed to be holding its breath. I lay still, listening, heart counting time in my chest. Sometimes I heard the shuffle again. Sometimes I heard nothing at all, which felt worse. Silence stopped being an absence and became a presence, something that pressed against my ears until I strained to hear anything else. One night, I got up and walked the hallway barefoot, the cold biting at my soles. Each step sent a faint ache up my legs. The floorboards complained softly beneath me, but there was another sound layered under it, a quieter echo that did not quite match my movements. I stopped. The echo stopped too. At the end of the hall, a door stood ajar. The spare room. I was certain I had closed it. I reached out and pushed it shut, the latch sliding into place with a reluctant click. My breath fogged in front of my face. For a moment, I had the irrational urge to apologize, though I could not have said to whom. When I turned back toward my bedroom, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. The footprints on the hallway floor did not belong entirely to me. My own were clear enough, damp impressions left by my bare feet. Interspersed among them were other marks, faint but present, as if someone had walked there long ago and the house had decided to remember it now. They were not shoe prints. They were broader, less defined, like impressions made by weight rather than shape. They led from the spare room door toward the stairs, then faded as if absorbed into the wood. I stood there until the cold forced me to move. I began to keep lights on at night. It didn't help. Light flattened the house, made shadows retreat into corners where they waited patiently. The darkness beyond the windows deepened by contrast, the woods becoming a solid wall rather than a suggestion. I stopped going into town unless I had to. The road was unreliable, and I found myself reluctant to leave the house unattended, though I couldn't have articulated why. I worked remotely, answered emails, joined meetings with my camera off. Colleagues commented on how quiet it must be out there, how peaceful. I smiled and agreed, my breath fogging faintly in the unheated air. As the weeks passed, the house grew more confident. That was the only word that fit. Doors opened farther. The lock slipped more easily. The shuffling sounds moved closer to my bedroom, less hesitant. Sometimes, in the early hours of the morning, I heard what might have been breathing, slow and steady, out of sync with my own. I told myself I was projecting, that isolation and cold were playing tricks on me. I read articles about how extreme weather affected perception. I tried meditating, deep breathing, anything to calm the tightness in my chest. Nothing touched it. The house felt like it was leaning closer each night, listening for something. The midpoint came without drama, without a sudden shock. It arrived quietly, as these things often do, disguised as a small, almost reasonable realization. I woke to silence so complete it felt wrong. Even the wind had stilled. The furnace was off. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, breath fogging the air in slow, careful plumes. When I sat up, I realized why the silence felt different. The bedroom door was closed. Not just closed, but firmly shut, the latch fully seated. I stared at it, my first instinct relief. Maybe this was it, I thought. Maybe whatever had been wrong had corrected itself. Maybe the house had finally settled. Then I remembered that I had gone to sleep with the door open. I stood and crossed the room, my steps cautious. I put my hand on the knob. It was cold, colder than the rest of the room, as if it had been holding something on the other side. I turned it slowly and pulled. The door resisted. Not stuck, exactly. More like held. There was a weight to it, a sense of pressure that pushed back against my pull. My heart thudded painfully. I tightened my grip and pulled harder. The door opened an inch, then another, releasing a breath of colder air from the hallway. I peered through the gap. The hallway light was on. I had not left it on. The floorboards were bare, no footprints this time, but the air felt charged, expectant. At the far end of the hall, the front door stood wide open, framing the white, unmoving woods beyond. Something about that open door felt final. I backed away, closing my bedroom door again, this time deliberately, until the latch clicked. I slid the dresser in front of it, the scrape of wood loud in the quiet room. I sat on the bed, shaking, and waited for something to happen. Nothing did. That was worse. From that night on, the house reversed our roles. I stopped fixing things. There was no point. The house was no longer forgetting my work, it was correcting it. If I wedged a door shut, it loosened it. If I blocked a draft, it found another path. It was teaching me, slowly and with great patience, that resistance was a language it spoke fluently. The woods outside pressed closer in my mind. I found myself standing at windows, staring at the tree line until my eyes ached. Sometimes I thought I saw movement there, a darker shape among the trunks, but when I focused, it resolved into nothing more than branches and shadow. Still, the sense of being observed intensified, a steady pressure that did not waver. I began to talk to the house. Not out loud at first. Just in my head, small, reasonable thoughts directed toward the walls, the floors, the doors. I told it I understood. I told it I would leave soon, once the road cleared, once the weather broke. The house responded by opening the back door wide enough to let snow pile across the kitchen floor. The night stretched longer. Sleep became impossible. I sat in the living room wrapped in coats, watching the fire die down to embers, listening to the wind pick up again. The front door latch clicked softly, experimentally, as if testing its limits. Each sound felt measured, deliberate. There was no panic in it, no rush. Whatever waited outside had all the time in the world. One night, I dreamed. That alone felt remarkable. In the dream, I walked the hallway, my feet silent on the boards. The house was warm, the air still. At the end of the hall, a door stood open, revealing the woods where the living room should have been. Snow fell gently inside, settling on the rug, the furniture, the walls. I stepped forward without fear, my breath no longer fogging, and felt something large and calm turn its attention toward me. I woke gasping, my chest tight. The living room smelled of cold air and damp wood. Snow lay scattered across the floor in a thin, even layer. The front door stood open. That was when I understood the second truth winter had been teaching me. The first was patience. The second was inevitability. I stopped closing the doors. This was not surrender, not exactly. It was acknowledgement. The house wanted openness. It wanted access. Each night, I left the bedroom door ajar, the hallway light off. I left the back door unblocked, the front door unlocked. In return, the house quieted. The shuffling sounds receded. The locks clicked less often. The pressure in the air eased, just enough that I could breathe. The woods did not advance, but they did not retreat either. They waited. Memory began to surface in fragments, uninvited but gentle. I remembered why I had come here in the first place, though I had not thought of it in months. I remembered the city apartment that had felt too full, too loud, the way every sound echoed with expectation. I remembered wanting quiet more than anything, wanting to disappear into a place where nothing asked anything of me. I got what I wanted. The house remembered footsteps better than it remembered me. That became clear in the way the floors creaked in patterns that did not match my movements, the way the stairs sighed as if bearing a weight that never quite arrived. I began to feel like a guest in my own life, tolerated but not central. The escalation came without warning, though in retrospect the signs were there. The temperature dropped another 10 degrees overnight, plunging the house into a deeper cold. The furnace failed completely. I layered clothing, wrapped myself in blankets, but the cold was no longer something I could keep out. It lived in the walls now, in the floors, in the spaces between rooms. That night, the shuffling returned, louder than before. It moved from room to room, unhurried, as if reacquainting itself with the layout. I sat on the bed, hands clenched, listening. My breath came in ragged clouds. Each exhale felt like it took more effort than the last. The sound reached the hallway outside my room and stopped. For a long time, nothing happened. Then the bedroom door began to move. Not pushed open. Not pulled. It simply eased wider, the gap growing inch by inch, releasing darkness that felt heavier than air. I stared at it, unable to move, my mind blank. In the darkness beyond, something shifted. I did not see it. I did not need to. The sense of it filled the space, immense and patient, as familiar as the cold. The woods were there, I realized, not just outside but within the house, their presence folded into the walls, the floors, the doors that would not stay shut. This was what the house had been preparing for. This was why it practiced. I closed my eyes and breathed, slow and careful. I thought of the snow, the way it covered everything evenly, without judgment. I thought of silence, of how it could be a kindness. When I opened my eyes, the darkness had not advanced, but it had not withdrawn either. It waited, as it always had. Every night ends the same way now. I sit awake in the cold, breath fogging the air, listening to the house settle around me. The doors stand open. The locks are useless. The woods press close, their patience endless.